President Trump is back in Washington tonight as all of this unfolds. He landed just last hour. We brought you those images live here on CNN after he spent his weekend with his family celebrating Thanksgiving in Florida at their private resort. He didn't talk to reporters, though, tonight. But as you know, he does like to share via Twitter. So let's get to CNN's Boris Sanchez in Washington following the president. Boris, fill us in on what the president is saying today about all this.
Hey there, Anna. Yeah, the president took to Twitter today to attack a Democrat, but it wasn't John Conyers or Al Franken. It was Doug Jones, the adversary of embattled Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore in Alabama. As you mentioned, the president arrived at the White House a short time ago. He ignored shouted questions from journalists about Roy Moore and about tax reform as well. But like I said, he did weigh in on Twitter, digging in his heels, stopping just short of endorsing Roy Moore, who's been accused of making unwanted sexual advances to teenagers when he was in his 30s. Now, the president going in a very different direction than other members of his party. If you recall, initially the White House put out a statement that echoed many other establishment Republicans, which said that if these allegations are true, then Roy Moore should step down. As more and more Republicans have called for Roy Moore to drop out of the race altogether, the president has seemingly turned to support him as he was asked by reporters before he left for Mar-a-Lago this week about the allegations. He said that Roy Moore has denied him and he wouldn't rule out going to Alabama to campaign for him. So it's really no surprise that he tweeted this out earlier today about Roy Moore's opponent. He writes, quote, "The last thing we need in Alabama and the U.S. Senate is a Schumer-Pelosi puppet who is weak on crime, weak on the border, bad for our military and our great vets, bad for our Second Amendment, and wants to raise taxes to the sky. Jones would be a disaster." He then later tweeted, "I endorsed Luther Strange in the Alabama primary. He shot way up in the polls, but it wasn't enough. Can't let Schumer-Pelosi win this race. Liberal Jones would be bad." Let's not forget that Roy Moore is essentially Steve Bannon's candidate. He is emblematic of Steve Bannon's war against establishment Republicans. So that's why you have senators like Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott saying that even if the Republican wins in this race, the party altogether loses, Anna.
You mentioned tax reform this week, and that's going to be a big focus of not just Congress, but the president, right, as he returns to Washington.
Look, this is a make-or-break moment for this year, for the first year of President Trump's administration. After so many months of failed legislative attempts to repeal and replace Obamacare, Republicans have a lot riding on tax reform. The Senate could potentially vote on it as early as Thursday. As you know, it's already a version of that bill has already passed the House. So the president is doing his part to try to sell this bill. He's actually visiting Republican congressmen, Republican senators on Tuesday at Capitol Hill. It'll be the third time that he goes there in just a little bit over a month. And let's not forget, there's another huge thing on the horizon. After his meeting on Capitol Hill, the president is set to meet with leaders of both parties at the White House to go over the budget. As you know, back in September, the president came to an agreement with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to delay a full-blown agreement, a full-blown bill on the budget. So they're revisiting again in December. They're going to have to agree to a budget to fund the government and potentially to raise the debt ceiling, and other things like DACA solution are also at play. All of that has to take place before December 8th. So it is a crucial time for this administration. And it's interesting to see the president kind of at odds with his own party on the issue of Roy Moore. Anna?
All right, Boris Sanchez in Washington. Thank you. Still ahead this hour in the newsroom, crunch time on a Hill. A little more than 4 weeks, just 12 scheduled legislative days left, and Congress, as Boris laid out, has a lot to get done. Plus, a possible new rift between Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and the White House, as officials say he is snubbing Ivanka Trump. Hear how, live in the CNN newsroom.